This video will show you the proper way to install a real power generator kit onto a 2011 F-550 crew cab cabin chassis with a 6.7 liter diesel, 6-speed automatic transmission with PTO, and a 200-inch wheelbase. Be sure to read and familiarize yourself with the installation manual before proceeding with this disc. There are important safety precautions that are outlined in this manual. Start by placing a suitable jack under the transmission to support the weight while the crossmember is removed. Remove the 3 clips securing the wiring harness to the crossmember. Remove the 6 bolts that secure the crossmember to the truck chassis, 2 on the driver's side, 4 on the passenger side. Also remove the 2 nuts for the transmission mount isolation bracket. The crossmember can now be removed and set aside. Remove the 2 bolts securing the transmission mounting bracket to the rear of the transmission. Using the provided spacer, install the 2 1/2-inch by 2 3/4-inch bolts through the factory transmission mount and the spacer. Apply a drop of red Loctite to each bolt, and then install the spacer and rear transmission mounting bracket back into the transmission. Tighten both bolts into the transmission. Keep in mind these are being screwed into aluminum. Take care not to over tighten. Install the crossmember to the rear transmission mounting bracket using the 2 nuts provided from the factory. These nuts can now be tightened. Install the spacer provided for the passenger side of the crossmember using 2 M12 by 70mm long bolts and the 2 nuts that were removed from the factory. Install the spacer provided for the driver's side of the crossmember using 2 M12 by 70mm long bolts, and again using the 2 nuts that were removed from the factory. The 4 M12 nuts and bolts securing the crossmember to the chassis can now be tightened. 2 new holes will need to be drilled for the crossmember. Mark these holes at this time. Use a center punch to mark the exact location of the hole to be drilled. Drill 2 half-inch holes at the pre-marked locations. Using the factory hardware, insert the studs through the newly drilled holes and attach using the factory nuts. Tighten the 2 nuts at this time. The transmission support can now safely be removed. Remove the 4 nuts securing the fuel filter mounting bracket to the truck chassis. Using the provided template, align with the factory holes and center punch each hole. Drill 4 half-inch holes in the frame. Carefully remove the factory fuel filter from its factory mounting location and allow it to rest freely in the frame. Install fuel filter bracket into newly drilled holes in the frame. Install the 4 factory nuts that were previously removed. You may need to tighten a few of the nuts to draw the other studs through the frame rail. Tighten all 4 nuts at this time. The front-wheel drive driveshaft will need to be disconnected for PTO installation. Remove the 4 bolts that secure the driveshaft to the driveshaft yoke on the front-wheel drive driveshaft. With the bolts removed, the driveshaft can easily be pried from the yoke. Driveshaft should be secured out of the way. Remove the 6 bolts that secure the PTO cover to the side of the transmission. A very small amount of transmission fluid will come out once the cover is removed. Here is a close-up view of the PTO drive gear inside of the transmission. remove the main pressure port plug from the transmission. Install the 90-degree elbow into the main pressure port of the transmission. Tighten this fitting by holding the fitting with one wrench and tightening the nut with the other wrench. Install one of the shoulder studs into the upper 12 o'clock position using two spiral lock nuts jammed together onto the stud. Once the stud is tight, two wrenches can be used to remove the spiral lock nuts. The stud will stay tight into the casing of the transmission. Install the second shoulder stud into the lower 6 o'clock position in the same manner as the first stud. Install the one step stud into the lower left hand position. Install it in the same manner as previously shown. With the studs installed, make sure that the mounting surface is clean. The factory PTO gasket will be reused. Make sure it is clean as well on both sides. Install the factory PTO gasket onto the mounting studs. Install the PTO onto the mounting studs of the transmission. Before tightening any bolts or studs, ensure that there are no gaps between the PTO and the transmission. Install the one whiz-lock nut onto the step stud at the lower left front. Install the two spiral lock nuts onto the two shoulder studs at the top and bottom. Install the cap screws into the remaining locations. Tighten all nuts and cap screws at this time.